Hello friends, my name is Bintou and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a book review on The Book of Lost Saints by Daniel Jose Older. All right, so I actually read this book back in January, and the reason that I came across it is because of Amerie's YouTube channel. I don't know if anyone watching knows who she is, but she was like an R&B singer back in the early 2000s, and I used to love her music when I was in middle school. And she now runs a YouTube channel where she has like this monthly book club. And so that's how I found this book. And I wanted to read it because the premise sounded really interesting, and also the cover looks really nice. That blue is my favorite color. All right, so let's jump into the review. And the first thing that I'll do is just give a summary of the plot. So there are actually two different timelines and two different narrators or main characters in this book. So the first main character is Ramon, and Ramon is in present day New Jersey, and he is an EMT or paramedic as his day job, and then at night he also does DJing, and music plays a pretty big role in this book. The second character that we're following is Marisol, and so Marisol is Ramon's aunt. Although he doesn't know this at the beginning of the book, he's not aware of her existence. And in this book, Marisol is actually a spirit or a ghost of some sort, and she is tethered to Ramon. She doesn't quite know how she got there, and she can't remember the details of her life. She just knows that if she strays away from Ramon, she will begin to disappear, like into the ether perhaps. And so as the book progresses, what's happening is that the memories, Marisol's memories, are slowly coming back to her, and she's communicating them to Ramon through his dreams. And this causes him to want to write this information down and then to begin to investigate his own family, his own history, his own heritage. This eventually leads Ramon to take a trip to Cuba for the first time, and that's when he learns a little bit more about how the Cuban Revolution has affected his family, and specifically the role that his aunt Marisol played in the events of the revolution. The main themes in this book are the importance of family and knowing where you come from. There's also a huge betrayal that occurs in the book, and then the forgiveness that has to occur between the members of the family. When I read this book, I actually read it with the audiobook. This is something that I do often. If you haven't checked out my video on how to read faster, then definitely go ahead and do that. And the audiobook was actually narrated by a Spanish speaker, which is pretty awesome. Overall, I think it was pretty well narrated. I will say that there are some words that the narrator may have pronounced that if you weren't reading along in the book, you would have no idea what she meant to say because the pronunciation was a little bit different. But otherwise, the audiobook experience was pretty great. So now I want to talk about some of the strengths or what I really enjoyed about this book. My favorite part about this book is the writing. The writing is very, very descriptive. And so when Ramon takes his trip back to Cuba, the author is able to create these vivid images in your mind using his words. It makes you feel like you're there with him on the island, and it kind of makes you want to go visit the island. I also love the role that music plays in this book. The author does a really good job of integrating music into the book. We learn about how music is important to the main character Ramon, to his mom and the rest of his family, and there are pivotal events in this book that are set in places like nightclubs where music is playing. The main character also, because he is a DJ, he's creating music, and it relates back to the Cuban heritage because when he visits Cuba, he incorporates some of the older music that he discovered as part of his heritage into the music that he plays as someone who lives in present day. The third thing is, when I discovered, so while you're reading the book, you eventually come to a point in time where you learn where the title comes from, why it's called The Book of Lost Saints, and I think that the meaning behind that is really beautiful. So one of the main characters in the book, Father Sebastian, he's talking to Marisol, and this is while she's imprisoned during the revolution, and he explains to her all the people that he calls the lost saints, the everyday average people who play such an important role in our lives but don't make it to the history books. So they are the lost saints. Now onto some of the critiques of this book. The biggest issue with this book is that the beginning of the book is so confusing. Like I said, there's two different timelines and two different main characters characters, and the author jumps between them quite often. But when you're just starting with the first 3 or 4 chapters, you don't quite understand that that is what is happening. Eventually it clears up, but this doesn't happen until you're about 3 or 4 chapters in. And so when I read this book, I actually picked it up and put it down maybe 2 or 3 times before I finally committed to getting over the first couple chapters. Once I got over that, the book really picks up and you become engrossed in the story. But I feel like that beginning is going to deter a lot of people from being able to get to that point. That is going to be something to be aware of if you do pick this up. And then another very, very minor critique, or something to be aware of more so, is that there is Spanish dialogue in this book and there isn't a translation offered. So if you have zero knowledge of Spanish, that might be something you want to be aware of. I had to take Spanish in high school, so I have a pretty limited understanding, and I was able to understand all of the Spanish dialogue that was presented. If not, I suppose you can just use Google Translate, although there is some slang, but I think the slang part is pretty obvious. All right, so now let's conclude this video and this review. Overall, I give this book 4.5 stars. I love the story. I love the characters and the family. I love the vivid imagery that the author creates, both while in New Jersey and when he takes his trip to Cuba and back. And I just love the overall message behind the book. The only reason I knocked down any points is because of what I said earlier about how the book starts off and how that might put off a lot of people. All right, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you liked it. If you did, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.